Well, that was certainly a crazy good year for video games, wasn't it? While 2023 doesn't quite live up to the personal hype I got in 2020, I still can't deny, collectively, this year has been insane. From Dead Space Remake to Baldur's Gate 3 to Phantom Liberty to Jedi Survivor to Resident Evil 4 Remake to Tears of the Kingdom to Sea of Stars to Super Mario Wonder to Lies of P and so many, many more. It's just been an unbelievable year for the medium, one that will no doubt go down as one of the best. It seems like all across the gaming spectrum, from indies to AAA games, and throughout all the genres, everyone's had something to really treasure this year, and that's outstanding. It brings me a lot of joy to see the medium thriving and growing. Of course, 2023 has also seen its fair share of challenges. We had a bunch of dud video games that released this year. Of course, The Day Before comes to mind immediately because it's so recent, but there's been other issues as well. Perhaps none more pressing than the staggering number of layoffs and turnover the industry continues to see on its development side. It's gotta be soul-crushing to spend years and years working on a project only to reach the climactic joy of seeing your cherished work reach its final state before being delivered a notice saying you're unemployed now. I send my best regards to all the developers who suffered this fate throughout the year, and I hope you're all able to bounce back. It's an issue I hope to see addressed sooner rather than later. But for now, let's celebrate the year that was. This is always one of my favorite videos to make every year. And yes, I know that I say that every year, but it really is true. Reflection is an important part of growth and self-discovery, and I think there's no better time to engage with that than during the final days of the year. Alright, before this gets too deep, let's talk about some video games. I want to switch things up this year. Instead of ranking the top 10 games I played from 2023 in some sort of concrete order, I'm just going to give you 10 games that I loved playing this year, regardless of the release date, and in no particular order. Now, don't fret, I'll still give out a game of the year, but I want to focus more on the moments, memories, and emotions that meant the most to me. Out of the 25 games I managed to complete this year, these are the ones that resonated with me the hardest, ones that have endured in my memory for a multitude of reasons. That's not to say I loved everything about them, but each had at least one thing that I cherished. So without further ado, these are the best games I played in 2023. You really thought I was going to start talking about video games now, didn't you, Squidward? Well, I can't recap this year in games without mentioning the excellent adaptation of The Last of Us. HBO, Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, Bella Ramsey, Pedro Pascal, and tons of others found a way to not only bring this iconic story to television, but more importantly, to match the high quality established in that classic Naughty Dog game. By doing so, they once again proved that video game stories can translate to other mediums without losing what makes them special, so long as the love and care required is put into it. Over the first few months of this year, I carved out a spot on my couch every Sunday evening just to see where Joel and Ellie would go next, and to see how the iconic moments, characters, and scenes would play out in this adaptation, and I was almost always hooked, hanging on the moment, despite knowing what would come next. The excellent acting, writing, settings, costume design, and more just provided an experience that I couldn't shake. While many scenes stand out for me, the moment when Joel and Tommy shared this exchange has endured in my memory, just as much as my favorite scenes from Part 1 and Part 2 have. The way Pedro brings Joel's pain to life in every component of this performance is incredible. The admission of being weaker than he once was, the raw fear of helplessness overtaking his entire being, it all just gives you chills. I love the show, one of the best I watched this year, and I'm stoked for Part 2. I'm so glad millions of people who've never played the game got the chance to experience this story, this setting, and these characters for the first time. Alright, game time. First up, let's talk about Respawn's Star Wars Jedi Survivor. the textbook definition of making a bigger and better sequel. The return of Cal Kestis was a real treat, especially because they've taken the now seasoned Jedi in a new direction, one that's experienced love and loss on a personal level, emotions a Jedi is to avoid. As a result, we see an emotionally susceptible version of the character, one who even embraces the dark side a few times throughout the game. This title was about setting up that plot thread for the inevitable third game, but it still intrigued me throughout, even if I've already seen it play out with Anakin. While the first game left me feeling pretty lukewarm narratively, this title got me more interested to see where Cal's character arc is going, and how he will manage this newfound anger. At the same time, it's just really freaking cool to fight with lightsabers. One of the most iconic weapons of all time returns to the palm of your hands as you hack, slash, twirl, and even blast your way through combat encounters. Despite feeling noticeably easier this time, the new stances provide a lot of opportunities for experimentation and replayability. Solid animations and proper sound work elevated the combat to be really satisfying, and the enemy variety also helped out as well. I never got tired of fighting in this game, and the final boss fight with Bode was something special. They did an incredible job of building this character up as a friendly face, only to reveal him as an adversary. They characterized Bode beautifully, as his darker side is a twisted result of the need to protect his daughter. It made this final showdown emotionally resonant, while also being the hardest fight in the game, which is a combo you love to see. It left the ending with some real weight and has me chomping at the bit for the next game. Of course, the most surprising thing to me about Jedi Survivor was how much I enjoyed the exploration. Koboh and Jedha were massive planets with tons of caves, alcoves, raised terrain, and entire other levels housed within them. I kid you not, one of the most memorable moments I had with gaming this year was walking into a tiny, unassuming cave and coming face to face with a Rancor mini-boss. That was just so cool. Sure, the game had linear levels as well, but it stunned me how much time I spent exploring these bigger planets. And it impressed me because it spawned from my curiosity as a player. There was nothing really dragging me to specific locations other than my own will to do so, and I love that feeling. Only one other game this year got me to do it more than Jedi Survivor, and for that, I'm really grateful. So here's hoping the third game will deliver more of this greatness. Speaking of video games based on a license, how about Insomniac's Spider-Man 2? This was the one title this year that I had no doubts that I would enjoy as I played it. One, or I guess two, of my favorite superheroes getting a brand new adventure delivered by a team that has proved themselves to be the workhorse developers of Sony's fifth console. What could go wrong? Usually those are famous last words, but in the case of Spider-Man 2, it just isn't. While the game doesn't quite do enough to push the series forward as much as a sequel should, it was still no doubt a joyous experience. Every year, there's a game that just begs you to get the Platinum Trophy through making them relatively easy to nab, while combining it with fast and fluid gameplay that delights. This was that game in 2023. As always, movement is just handled so beautifully throughout this game and this series. Web swinging is always enjoyable, owed to the micro decisions you make every few seconds on which direction to go or when to cast a new web. You combine that with the extremely quick new web wings that let you soar all across the city, while the man-made lights of skyscrapers and the natural lights reflecting off the river dazzle you. It lends a cinema-level feel to basic traversal, and anytime a game can make the simple act of moving feel engaging, they've done something right. The return of that Arkham-style combat is welcomed here, even if it is a bit more style over substance this time around. Best-in-class animations will have you feeling in awe that you're the one with the controller in your hands, pulling off all these sick-looking maneuvers. If you can resist the temptation to use the overpowered gadgets and the special abilities, well, then you have a real opportunity to push yourself in combat, just as much as the Batman games did nearly a decade ago. Wow, I'm old. Plenty of boss fights against iconic Spider-Man villains are also a real treat. I love those. Of course, the real heart of the story comes from Peter and Miles as they continue to grapple with the ever-enduring Spider-Man dilemma, how to live as a man and as a hero at the same time. We get to see Miles go on an arc of maturation and self-realization as he learns more and more about the hero he wants to become. Meanwhile, Peter deals with a plot thread we've seen before, but brought to life in a whole new way with this video game medium. Venom is vicious, even overtaking the spotlight from a pretty good Kraven performance, and it's just awesome to see. Still, it's the middle portion of the game where Peter starts to lose himself just as Miles is finding himself that feels most impactful. There's a well-balanced dichotomy between the two characters, and having the younger one save the mentor ends up being a really touching moment. Look, I won't lie, I do think Spider-Man 2018 is a more enjoyable experience overall because of the gameplay novelty, the better side quests, the more balanced combat, but there's no denying that Spider-Man 2 is a really good time as well. It's one that I couldn't put down and blasted through in just a few days, and that's always the mark of a good game. As we transition to the third entry, I'm excited to see Miles step up as it appears he will be the primary character going forward. Still, this title will always be special for being one of the few games that lets you play as two versions of one of your favorite heroes. That's just plain cool, and I fully trust that Insomniac will round out this trilogy with something amazing next time around. Alright, it feels like every year I put one video game on my list that a lot of people feel like doesn't belong there, and this is going to be that entry. And I feel like I have to talk about this game now, because if I wait too much longer, people will assume it's one of my top 3 games on the year when it isn't. But yeah, I'm talking about Bethesda's Starfield in this video. Look, I don't mind telling you, this title is pretty mid, failing to live up to the legacy of older Bethesda bangers, specifically Skyrim. It has a myriad of unforgivable issues like all the crashes. It also has some basic and boring combat. It has an obsession with hoping you'll play the game forever, and it's always loading, always with the loading. Ugh. So yes, I'm not telling you this is the best game of the year at all, but this is a personal list, filled with the experiences that I enjoyed most, and as I reflect, I can't deny that some of my favorite moments did come from Starfield. Exploring New Atlantis from top to bottom for the first time, questing on Neon, and working my way through the well-paced and wonderful UC Vanguard and Crimson Fleet questlines jump out immediately. Despite being a smaller percentage of my total playtime, these were the adventures that stuck out to me the most, and that's owed to Bethesda's enduring strength, the world building. I won't waste time talking about any other systems, trying to drum them up as something special. No, the thing I loved about Starfield was its inhabited worlds. Exploring New Atlantis, Neon, the Key, Aquila City, and a bunch of other small towns while talking with the people who live there, learning about their lives and their societies through extremely detailed and fleshed out dialogue options was fantastic. I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, but the amount of optional dialogue in this game, included just to expand on characters and cities, was staggering. And as a result, I came to view these places as lived in, despite how little NPCs actually do in the world. What can I say, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff, if that wasn't already evidenced by my love of Horizon Forbidden West last year. So yeah, that was what was special to me about Starfield, that insane attention to detail within the world building, that obsessiveness to flesh it out despite how inconsequential any given NPC or business may be. It's just there, waiting for you to discover it if you want, and that's awesome to me. More of that next time, Bethesda, and a lot less of the other junk. Thanks. Alright, how about we go from one of the last games I played this year back to the very first one. As the calendar rolled into 2023, I wondered what I would play during January. Despite the chance to catch up on some of the games I missed last year, I was too busy being enthralled by a sweet piano melody, some pixel art, and a small town with big powers. Mojikin's A Space for the Unbound was easily one of my favorite games to play through this year. From the second it finished downloading and I heard that incredible piano music playing on the title screen, I knew I was down for whatever this adventure brought. Seriously, I can still hear that piano theme in my head despite not hearing it in, 11 months now? That's crazy. But A Space for the Unbound is something more special than just a good soundtrack. It's a reminder of youthful imagination and how we sometimes lose touch with that side of ourselves as we mature into a harsh world filled with very real problems. Simultaneously, the game isn't afraid to acknowledge that, for some people, these problems start long before adulthood, whether it be through bullying or abusive or neglectful parenting. Navigating that reality during your formative years can build you stronger or leave you scarred depending on how you're able to endure through it. Coping with anxiety and depression is a major theme of the narrative here. These themes are touched on through the game's characters, Rhea and Atma, two teenagers living in a quiet and unassuming little Indonesian town. You play primarily as Atma, a young boy who is attempting to learn more about the town he lives in, and even more so about his friend Rhea, who's clearly going through some things in her personal life. There's an air of mystery throughout the game, and the layers of it are slowly peeled back until the full picture becomes quite clear, and that's part of why the game is so interesting. You see, Rhea and Atma aren't just normal teenagers. Each of them has been granted a special ability with incredible power and the potential for consequence. Rhea is capable of warping reality at the snap of her finger, but she often loses control of this when emotionally vulnerable, leading to great devastation. Atma's power is much more curative, as he's able to enter the internal psyche of people and mend their troubled minds. This is how much of the game is played, as you use Atma's abilities to not only help Rhea, but also the townsfolk. This is mostly done through point-and-click gameplay, but there's enough variation and new minor systems to keep things feeling fresh across the roughly 8 hours it takes to complete the title. This freshness keeps you going even if the setting remains limited. And at the end of it all, you just get a really life-affirming message about the importance of being there for those around us. How simply providing a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen with can really help those that are struggling. It's a beautiful sentiment, one that doesn't get old no matter how many times it's portrayed in any medium. I always enjoy being reminded of that wholesome message, and that, alongside of some other elements, easily make A Space for the Unbound one of my favorite experiences in 2023. Next up, we have another title that, much like Starfield, I really enjoyed certain elements of it, despite the rest of the experience being dragged down a bit. Yep, I'm talking about Square Enix's Final Fantasy XVI. The two things I enjoyed most about my second dip into the franchise would be Clive Rossfield and those unbelievably epic and massively scaled boss battles, easily the best set pieces in any game I played this year, bar none. But yeah, let's start with Clive. To be frank, Clive is just cool. I don't think he's one of the deepest characters on the year, but he has a heroic quality to him that's just hard not to like. He has a quiet stoicism to him, but also a deeply caring and emotional side underneath the surface. He's like the guy that girls want to be with and that other guys want to be. I don't really know how else to describe him. He's just a really likable dude who rubs off on you as you play through the game. He garnered a lot of respect from me simply for the way he went about his business and how he stood up against injustice. Just an awesome character. Oh, and Sid was pretty cool too. Just a cheeky, badass character. I love that dude too. Now, combat was pretty fun, if not a little repetitive, succumbing to a lot of the same easiness felt in Spider-Man 2, owed to the very powerful abilities you unlock. But yeah, let's not bullshit around here. Those icon fights are what I will always remember about this game. From the first time you fight as a freak against Garuda, to scaling Titan as he devastates the land attempting to kill you, to tagging up with your bro to fight Bahamut, and more, all of these moments that just make you say, hell yeah. It's just an insane amount of technical polish and performance delivered with an unparalleled sense of cinematography that just makes your jaw drop, shocked to realize that you're the one controlling the action. It genuinely feels like you're controlling how the scenes play out in a blockbuster level action scene, and you get to do this like 6 or 7 times throughout the game. Just unbelievable, really. Maybe the only thing I can even compare it to would be some of the boss fights in the older God of War games, except scaled up even further because of the power granted by today's technology. While I won't really remember the uninspired towns or the boring side quest or some of the lesser side characters, I will always remember how it felt to fight as Ifrit with crystal clear focus. And to me, that's what made Final Fantasy XVI special. Not every component of every game will click with you, but there are just some moments that feel so special that they endure on in your memory long after the console's turned off. And it just so happens that Final Fantasy XVI gave me a bunch of them. Amazing, truly unlike anything I've experienced before. You know, one game I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did was Sabotage Studios' Sea of Stars. This retro-inspired turn-based RPG stood out because of its gorgeous pixel art, engaging combat, lovable characters, and a rich level of quality throughout. I'm not someone who grew up with the RPGs of yesteryear, but even without that nostalgic feeling to influence my perception, Sea of Stars was still an immaculate experience devoid of any major issues. The pixel graphics were insanely good, regardless of what biome, what colors, what mood, and what animations any given scene called for. It was all good. The hard work that went into designing each tiny square of this game shows and endures throughout, as every scene has some small detail to appreciate. Like, look at the way this rope dips as your characters move across it, or how these save point books float and light up. No work has been spared in making sure that the pixel art isn't just a mere artistic choice, but instead evidence of the developer's love of the style. Combat was also well thought out, with plenty of decisions to make within just a single turn. You have your usual physical and magical attacks alongside of item usage, but there's so much more owed to how the game utilizes elemental magic. Certain enemy types are weak to certain affinities, and breaking their stance by hitting them with the corresponding attack not only staggers them, but also negates one of their powerful attacks. Of course, finding a way to make sure all your attacks hit before they launch their offensive maneuvers is what grants the combat a strategic element. At the same time, there's also action elements like having to bounce projectiles back and forth in sync with the rhythm, or charging your fireball with specific timing to maximize damage. As a result, combat not only has the basics of a turn-based game, but also incorporates additional strategy and action elements to really make it shine. I never got tired of combat throughout the experience because it always kept me on my toes. And then there were the characters. Zale and Valir are your standard heroes, specializing in solar and lunar magic respectively, but it's the accompanying characters that shine brightest. In particular, Garl. Man, this dude was probably my favorite character in a game this year, even topping Clive for me personally. He's the lovable, good-natured sidekick with a heart of gold. Despite not having the magic that the others have, he fights bravely and goes through an entire emotional arc that I won't spoil here. I'll just say he provides the biggest emotional gut punch throughout the game, and it's one that lingers till the credits roll. Of course, even when those credits turn over, there's still so much more to do if you want to see the game's true ending. The team already had provided a great game, but they went that extra mile to deliver something truly special. The result is a title that doesn't linger in the shadows of the games it's inspired by, but instead, one that stands tall on its own confidently, unafraid to be its own thing while still paying homage to those older titles. If you're looking for a fantastic, turn-based RPG, look no farther than Sea of Stars. I made 20 videos this year, or maybe 21, depending on when this video comes out, but there were none more controversial than my Lies of P video. Okay, I mean, I'm self-aware enough to know that this is a small channel, and using the word controversial there is a bit hyperbolic in the grander scheme of things, but like I said at the outset of this video, reflection is important. Basically, a lot of folks took exceptions to my claim that the game didn't do enough to inform the player on the intended playstyle, by throwing in Sekiro-style deflection with the Bloodborne-inspired rally mechanic. Many players viewed this more favorably than me, as a toolbox of sorts, but more so, they took exception with my claims that the developers didn't understand what made each of these systems special in their respective games, and instead just haphazardly threw them into Lies of P. And that was wrong of me. There's no way I could have known that to be true, and based it simply on my own perception of the game that was informed through only a single playthrough. So I apologize for that, and I'm glad people took exception to it and criticized me a bit for it without being rude. It's good to keep content creators accountable. Besides that, what saddens me is that many people left that video thinking I didn't absolutely love Lies of P, because I did. From the atmospheric world of Krot, to how the game incorporated the themes of Pinocchio while transforming them into something new, to how the dialogue options carried narrative weight, to the fantastic combat that I did love outside of a few boss fights that I took exception to, and more, the game just pretty much had me hooked. I actually took a vacation midway through my playthrough and spent a good part of that downtime wishing I was playing Lies of P. It was that good. The thing I regret is that I made my video review after just a single playthrough, when it's obvious that this game is much deeper than what can be gathered after only 25 hours or so. From deep character building to weapon customization to experimentation and more, it just offers a lot. I wish it didn't release in September, which was already so crammed with work. Anyway, I don't think the game gets enough credit for its thematic exploration of humanity and what it means to be human. It explores this theme through the avenue of human dishonesty. Lying is a tool that can both help and harm, protecting others from a painful truth, while also being capable of being quite damaging. The way the game explores this theme is really well done. Genuinely though, this is one of the best 3 games I played in 2023, and for the developers at Round 8 Studios and NeoWiz Studios to create something so magnificent on a first attempt is mind-boggling. It's clear there's a lot of talent at that studio, and it's one we need to keep an eye on going forward. I'd welcome any DLC this game has to offer, and here's hoping I can find time to get back into that world to brush up on my skills and get better against some of the more challenging bosses. If you're a fan of the Soulsborne family of games, you absolutely owe it to yourself to check out Lies of P, because it very much feels like one of the few Souls-likes that can go toe-to-toe with From Software from a quality perspective. Okay, I still have 3 games that I want to talk about, and the 2 after this are experiences I enjoyed more than this one, but if you're asking me to pick a game specifically from 2023 as my game of the year, look no further than Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, let me be clear. I'm pretty sure I'll have begun dipping my toes into Baldur's Gate 3 by the time this video releases, and I could easily see that taking the cake for my favorite game of the year. If that ends up happening, I'll leave a pinned comment on this video letting you know, so be sure to check that out if you're watching this video a few months after release. Anyway, sorry Nintendo, I didn't mean to do you dirty like that, because Tears of the Kingdom was something truly great. It's weird to say this, but Tears of the Kingdom isn't the game I had the most pure fun with in 2023, which is usually a good indicator for your personal game of the year. It's also not one that impressed me much with its narrative, although it is vastly improved over Breath of the Wild. Seriously, that reveal of where Zelda has been the entire game was mind-blowing and truly a memorable sequence. But no, the reason this takes the cake for me at the time of writing is because of how it got me to appreciate a side of gaming that normally does not interest me. I'm very much driven by narrative, world building, and structured objectives while playing video games. That's the components that usually interest me most. But Tears of the Kingdom got me to appreciate player-driven exploration across dozens and dozens of hours. Starfield's planet-side exploration and base building never interested me, and Jedi Survivor's exploration had me full after 5 or 6 hours of it, which was usually enough. But with Tears of the Kingdom, things clicked, and I understood how it felt to be pulled across the map by my own intuition instead of through map markers. Visual cues are what got me across Hyrule, wanting to see what that thing over there was, only to uncover it, explore it, defeat its enemies, collect its rewards, before moving on to the next thing on the horizon. And I think that's because the game's systems were so well thought out and rich, full of moments for player experimentation and intuition. Nintendo just hands you a toolbox, richer in its amount of tools and their capabilities than Breath of the Wild, and just lets you go hog wild with it. These come in the form of the Zonai devices, and they provide a staggering amount of depth to build. To be clear, people have created things much more impressive than me, but even the act of making a simple glider or a car was enough to fascinate me. Truly, a staggering amount of work went into getting the physics and tools right to ensure player freedom was right at the forefront of the experience. For years, I wondered why it was taking them so long to make and release this game when it seemed so much was already complete in Breath of the Wild. This potential for building was one of two components that explained and justified the long wait immediately. And the other was that, oh yeah, Hyrule is like 2.5 times bigger than before. The Sky Islands were touted throughout the trailers, promising that verticality would be explored this time since Breath of the Wild had already covered horizontality. Yes, that is a word, it just isn't used that much. But little did we know how so much more awaited deep underground. The depths provided a massive 1-to-1 replica of Hyrule with a dark twist. Literally, it's hard to see down here. There's tons of new challenges, new resources, new enemies, and even entire quest lines to discover deep underground, and all of it is just there, waiting to be uncovered when you see fit, not because a mission marker is dragging you there all the time. It's incredible in its own right, but even more so when you consider the technology they are working with, a complete masterclass from a technical perspective. So yes, Tears of the Kingdom is the best game I played from 2023 because it got me to appreciate a side of gaming that I normally turn a blind eye to. It offered me a fresh experience, one that I didn't have with the other games listed before, simply because I had played something that was like them in the past. Tears of the Kingdom got me to love a style of gameplay that I'm not used to in a way that Breath of the Wild never did, and for that, it is my game of the year for 2023. Congrats, Nintendo, you did it. But we aren't done there. I played 2 games this year that didn't release in 2023 that I enjoyed more than Tears of the Kingdom. Coming up just short of my favorite experience in gaming this year, we have Marvel Snap. Yeah, a mobile game. I'm just as surprised as you are. But man, I won't lie, I am absolutely hooked on Second Dinner's superhero-inspired strategy card game. I'm not lying when I say that I don't think I went a single day this year without playing at least one game of Marvel Snap. It has become a fixture of my downtime, sucking away time I'd spend with console games. I'm playing it while watching YouTube videos to get my brain going in the morning, during toilet breaks, and even when I'm eating sometimes. I can't put the game down. And while I recognize that a lot of bells and whistles that have been adopted from slot machines may just be the reason for that, I don't feel this game is predatory at all. In fact, I've only spent $20 on it to get the Loki Season Pass and the Elsa Bloodstone Season Pass. Never have I felt the need to really buy a particular card, as I genuinely feel constant playing has earned me enough rewards for free to collect some of the best cards in the game. Hell, there's even a deck that's completely free to play in Shuri, Sauron, Red Skull, Taskmaster that is very viable competitively. I'm by no means an elite player, but the constant release of new cards has kept me hooked playing the game and watching KM Best's channel on a weekly basis. The meta feels like it's constantly evolving owed to consistent balance patches. They aren't always agreeable, especially when the team releases a broken card on the Season Pass and then nerfs it a few times to make it nearly unplayable. I'm looking at you, Elsa Bloodstone. I can't agree with that sort of behavior, but the team seems receptive to this criticism and has made pledges to be more transparent about it going forward, which is good. Of course, what really allures me to the game is the diversity of the deck building. There are decks that focus on putting out huge power, ones that focus on destroying or discarding your own cards to accrue match-winning value, ones that emphasize moving your cards around, ones that focus on achieving a combo that's nearly unbeatable when it goes off, ones that serve tech roles and rotate usefulness depending on the meta, and even unique cards that provide game-warping maneuvers. A thoughtfulness has gone into understanding the heroes and villains each card is based on and providing them an ability that reflects that character, such as how Spider-Man wraps up one of your cards and moves it and itself to a new location, or how High Evolutionary gives abilities to cards that didn't previously have them. It's this attention to detail that really makes this game shine from a presentational perspective as much as it does a mechanical one. And the beauty is that the game is so easy to understand from the outset. There's 3 lanes, you win by having more power in 2 of them. It's that simple, but every location and every card provides unique modifiers that you must account for. You are rewarded for understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your deck, but also by your accrued knowledge for what an opponent might be up to based on the cards you're seeing from them. And if you're confident, you can snap, just like Thanos. This anti-system feeds into your overall rank within the game and is a super fun mechanic to play around with. On top of that, the game offers 2 unique modes, Ladder and Conquest. And while they play identically, there's a strong difference in what decks work best within each mode. Ladder climbing decks might not work out in Conquest, where you have to beat the same opponent a handful of times in a single match. So it's just awesome diversity. And like I said, the microtransactions aren't too predatory. If you want to be a collector more than a player, then yeah, you're gonna have to shovel in some money, but for me personally, I've unlocked a lot of cool card variants simply by playing the game for free. Truly, I'm shocked. If you had told me 1 year ago that a mobile game would be featured in my best games of the year video, I would have laughed. But here we are. Marvel Snap is a treat, and it's one I don't see myself putting down anytime soon. And now we've arrived to the true ending, my actual favorite game that I played this year, Atlus's Persona 4 Golden. Alongside A Space for the Unbound, I found myself playing through Persona 4 Golden in January, but unlike that indie hit, it's an experience that endured throughout nearly the entire year. I played it at my own leisure, on my own time, without the pressure to make a video on it. And as a result, I have very limited amount of footage to show here, but it's one that I can't not talk about in this video. I think one reason I loved it so much was that longevity. I played it from January to November. It was my comfort game to go back to. As the days and months turned over in Inaba, so did they in this real world, leading to a strange but welcomed paralleled feeling. 6 years ago, I played Persona 5, and 3 years ago, I played Persona 5 Royal, and I absolutely adored it, citing it as my second favorite game of all time behind only Sly 2 Band of Thieves. But now, I don't know anymore, I don't know. My time with Yusuke, Chie, Yukiko, Kanji, Teddy, Rise, Naoto, and many others was something special as I found the quiet small town of Inaba to be a lot more well realized and familiar than the jammed streets of Shibuya. Every NPC, no matter how small, had a story to tell through mini quests that they would give you. You'd learn about their struggles both on a personal level and as a society, as local business was being swallowed up by the powerhouse industry titan that was Junes. But those stressors of everyday life would often just melt away as I had you take some quiet time to spend at the riverbank, just fishing or admiring the current. I was sucked into this world in a way that Persona 5 never could, despite how much I loved its characters. Inaba felt so much more realistic and familiar, but again, I live in a small town as well. But of course, I did also love these characters in Persona 4 just as much as Persona 5. Just like in P5, each of them is going through their own struggles, but many of those struggles feel more grounded this time around. Maybe it's just recency bias, and I'll be able to tell later after I play Persona 3 Reload. If that ends up being my new favorite Persona game, we'll see. Maybe this was just recency bias, but I just feel like these characters were more relatable and realistic, seeing how many of them didn't fall into popular school archetypes like in Persona 5. I think a lot of that may be owed to Inaba's more quiet and reserved nature, which allowed the substance of the writing to shine, while in P5, style was always at the forefront. The glamour and glitz that P5 characters emanate just isn't felt here, making them feel more relatable. I found the main party as well as the other social links to be really enjoyable, well written, and full of wholesome messages and character growth. While the dungeons aren't nearly as engaging as those in Persona 5, nor are the villains, combat was still really enjoyable and had a strong layer of strategy to it. But again, these aren't the things that will stick with me. Instead, it is those characters and the arcs they go on, as well as the overall narrative that I really enjoyed. It was super heartfelt. It's those moments of hanging out with a friend only to have an unexpected foray into the struggles they're facing, and doing my best to lend them a helping hand as much as I would for a friend in real life. It's that connection built through exposure and shared hardships that really makes you view these characters as people, and the writing is subtle enough to not beat you over the head with their arcs and messages. I loved it, I truly did, so yeah. Maybe Persona 4 Golden is now my second favorite game of all time, I'm not sure. It will depend on the day you ask me about it. But what won't vary is that this was the best game I played in 2023. And there you have it, another year in the books. There's a ton of games and moments I could have shared, like how Dredge hooked me with its management systems, or how Hogwarts Legacy injected pure nostalgia into my veins as I explored the iconic castle home to wizards and witches, but I'm happy with how this video turned out in the shape that it is. To no surprise, 2023 has been the best year for the channel yet in terms of growth and watch time. It's the first year my channel was fully monetized, and while that really isn't the point, it's been awesome to see all my hard work rewarded monetarily alongside of the enjoyment I get from interacting with you guys. Truly, that's what means the most to me. As a result, I hope to see you all in 2024. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives to hear some dude like me talk about games, and for sharing your own detailed thoughts in the comments section. I try to respond to as many as I can, so be sure to let me know what your top 3 games were this year. Oh, and keep an eye out to see if Baldur's Gate 3 was my real game of the year. Anyway, I'll be kicking off 2024 with a look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Indigo Disc DLC, so be on the lookout for that. I have decided to move past Persona 5 Tactica, it just wasn't clicking for me with the gameplay, so apologies if you were looking forward to that video. Oh, and if you want to hear more of my complete thoughts on any of these games, check out my channel to see videos on each, except the last 2. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, join our Discord, the link is below, and as always guys, have a nice day, a nice new year, and take care.